Hi, it's Steve Forgeton, and welcome to our second session from this all-day mini conference on emergency teaching and learning. Will Poindexter here. Welcome. You can take over.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me take this over. All right, so my name is William Poindexter, and today I will be giving you a presentation on setting up G Suite for Education. To get started, I'd like to just introduce myself a little bit. I started working on computers when I was in high school when I broke my parents' first computer. And soon after that, I graduated and I joined the military, did computers in there for almost 8 years. After that, I went to college, got my degree in networking and telecommunication. And since then, I have been working with my company Beyond Technology Education. So now that you know a little bit about myself, let's get started with the presentation. All right, so why G Suite for Education versus G Suite Basic? So when it comes to Google, there's a whole bunch of different types of suites that you can have. You have the basic, you have the business, you have even the education. So the reason why you want G Suite for Education is it's completely free for the schools. So with the basic version, you have to pay so much per user, per use, different services. With the G Suite for Education, that's all included. You get the centralized management, and the system is built for teachers and students, so it's really easy for the teachers to figure out how to use the stuff like Google Meets and so forth, and for the students to kind of figure out how to use the Google Classroom. So why Google over some other competitors? With Google, they're actually on par with a lot of the other bigger companies. The difference with Google is, in my experience, is that their tech support is amazing. If you have any issues, you submit on call, a code or whatever, they'll call you. You can do a live text or a live chat. Their tech support is really good. They're really good about answering more of the technical questions that you might not know. On top of that, the devices, Google has their own type of devices, the Chromebooks. These Chromebooks are built with the Google OS, so they integrate very well with the Google management. Along with the devices being very easy to maintain, there's not that many components in a Chromebook. Surprisingly, there's only about 3 major components. You've got the keyboard, the screen, and the motherboard. So they're very easy to fix if you do come into the issue where you're having to fix the devices because the kids are breaking them. So Google and distant learning. So Google is one of the first companies that started doing cloud services. These cloud services helped a lot of schools and people be able to store stuff on the cloud and instead of on their devices. With that being said, with Google for Education, the schools actually get unlimited storage. So you're not limited by the basic accounts and stuff on the amount of storage that you have available, which is really good for students. They can store all their homework. Teachers can store classes, presentations without having to worry about running out of space. Another really good feature that Google has is the Google Classroom. This is where the teachers would go to set up assignments, tell the students here's what's going on. They can do announcements. They've even gone as far as adding testing and stuff on there where you can actually grade the students within Google Classroom. And then with everything that's going on, Google has opened up their Meets for everyone for right now 6 months. Depending on what's going on, it may be longer. This gives a spot for the teachers and the students to just get in and meet like they're in class when they're not in class. Teachers can go as far as recording classes and then posting them into their Google Classroom. So let's go to the next slide. So now that we've talked about Google for Education, I'm going to start following through the steps on how to set up Google for Education. So the first step is you need to get a valid domain. Some schools or organizations already have domains. If it's a school, they usually have a domain and it's already being used. So my personal recommendation is to always get a new domain. The reason for this is once you finish up the settings with Google Suite for Education, if you're attached to any other mail providers, if your mail records are somewhere else, you're going to lose those emails. The second thing that you're going to need is you're going to need the access to the DNS records. Why you need access to this is when you're setting up G Suite for Education, you're going to have specific files that they're going to ask you to post in the DNS records to make sure that you are the actual owner of the DNS or of the domain, and that you are able to set up the emails. Next thing you're going to need is you're going to need school information for verification. This is very important. The reason for this is that when you're submitting the stuff or when you're submitting to set up G Suite for Education, it's going to ask you for various information like the school, school type, school name, address, and stuff like that. If you have the information at the beginning, it's a lot easier to set it up. The next and final, which in my opinion is pretty important, is school cooperation. The reason why I added this is you could want to set up G Suite, you could have all the steps in place to set up G Suite, but unless the school's willing to use it, there's really no point in it. And not only being willing to use it, but also being willing to set it up. A lot of these steps for verification are required, like the principal, superintendent, depending on how your school is ran. Someone's going to need to reply to emails and submit information, additional information that Google may require to verify that you are a school. So school cooperation is a very important part. Okay, so now requesting G Suite for Education. So here on this page, we have the gsuite.google.com/signup/edu/welcome. This is the website that will send you directly to getting yourself set up for Google for Education. Once you get there, it's going to say, hey, welcome here. Would you like to proceed? And then you're going to say yes. On the next slide or the next page, it's going to ask for the school name, school type, the website, and the number of staff and students. School type, it's asking basically, are you a primary school or are you like a post-education school? Depending on what type of school you are, you'll select that one. For the number of staff and students, this is just so Google has a reference of what size of schools are using their system. So it doesn't matter if you're 10 to 20 people or 1,000 to 2,000. It's just more for a reference, just so they kind of have an idea of what kind of schools are using it. No, is it not share? All right. G Suite for Education continued. The next thing you're going to need is the school address. Now, the big thing with this is the school address is the physical location of the school, not the mailing address for some schools that are different. The reason for this is again something that Google's going to use to verify if you're a school or not. The next thing you're going to need is a valid email. Let's see what people are saying. Okay. Now, the reason for a valid email is Google's going to send you some information back and forth to try to verify and different stuff. If you use an email that's attached to a domain that you're transferring over, you're going to lose that email. You're going to have a lot of communication errors. So make sure it's a valid email that's not being affected by this setup. The next thing you're going to need is the domain name. This is the name that you're wanting to use for the G Suite. It can be a .edu, a .org. It's just whatever your school is wanting to use. The next thing it's going to ask for is creating the admin account. Make sure that this admin account that you're creating is not assigned to a specific person. In my experience, I've seen principals and other staff members set up admin accounts with their name, and they've used these admin accounts like they were regular accounts, and they have gotten taken over by malicious users and stuff, and it is very difficult to get the access back to those accounts. So make sure that the account you are using is completely separate from a daily use account. Next, you're going to want to set the password. Again, make sure it's a nice complicated password and something that's not easy to guess. And then at the same time, make sure it's something that you're going to remember. So verifying your domain. Once you get this all set up, you then have access to the Google Admin Console. This is where you're going to do all of your special settings, creating the users, creating the groups, and all of this. To get to this, you're going to go to admin.google.com. Once in there, you're going to log in with the admin account. They have changed a few of the steps, but the last time I've set this up, they did ask you to verify that you own the domain. This is done by adding a TXT record to your DNS. This TXT record is a string of random information, random letters, and everything. All you have to do is go to your domain registrar, log in, and then add those records. Once those records are added, you'll have to give it a little bit, and then eventually it's going to propagate across the system, and Google will be able to tell that you own it, and it will verify that you are the owner. So once you set that up, the next step is to set up the mail exchange. This is where you get your emails from. There is a system behind your emails called the mail exchange. To do this, you're going to, again, access your DNS records. Google is going to provide you with a string of DNS records that you're going to add to your DNS records. Depending on your registrar for your domain, the steps are different. So there's no one-shop setting for all these steps. So you'll have to go to your registrar to get that information on how to add these records. If you are using GoDaddy, Google does help you with those steps and tells you how to set up the MX and the TXT records with GoDaddy. Once that's done, it's going to take some time for everything to propagate and to verify that the emails are going through. Google says this takes different times. Sometimes they say 24 hours. I've seen them say up to 72 hours. So once this is all put in, you just need to wait and let it all take effect. The best test to find out if it's working is just start sending emails. Once you have that done, the next step would be setting up the accounts within Google to start having your staff members and students and everyone use it. The first step is to actually create organizational units. These are groups of users that allow you to easily manage different sections instead of having to do settings for each individual user. When I usually set up Google for Education for schools, I like to do organizational units like staff members and students. Within the students, I actually like to do individual grades. The reason for individual grades is some schools, they don't allow their elementary or lower students to have emails. With that being said, I can go to each grade and disable, enable, do different settings per grade instead of just the students as a whole. But if you do need to do settings to all the students, that's the reason for the students organizational group. The next group, the few groups that you could do is like an IT staff, a non-school staff. These could be like parent teachers that are helping, just people that aren't actually school staff, even like maintenance workers and stuff like that. If the schools have like contracted maintenance workers and stuff and they need accounts, you can set them under there. So once that's done, then we can start creating the users. What you'll do is you'll go to the individual organizational unit and then start creating the users. The reason for accessing the individual organizational units is if you are not in the right organizational unit, it will put it as the unit that you're in. And this can be really confusing when setting up like students and teachers and stuff. If you click the wrong one, you could put students and the teachers, teachers and the students, and so forth. So make sure that you're on the right organizational unit. It does give you an option with while you're creating the users to change the organizational unit. So if you do happen to be in the wrong one and you are like needing to put it somewhere else, it is available for that. So when creating the users, it's very simple setup. You have your first name, last name. It's going to ask that information, and then it's going to ask for the username. Depending on the school requirements, what I see is you usually have first initial, last name. Some schools have student IDs. It's just whatever the school requires for you to use. The reason why I do like first initial last name is the teachers, when they're setting up their Google Classrooms and various things for the students, they know their students. They know their first name, they know their last name. They'll be easily able to find them within the groups and send them emails if they have emails. Student IDs are a little more complicated. Teachers usually don't know their ID numbers. Once that's done, you'll assign them the domain. Depending on how you set up Google for Education, you can attach multiple domains to it, and you can assign which domain they have. This is the @something.com.org. It's just whatever you have. And then finally, you can set the password. For setting the password, you can have Google generate you a password. You can create your own password. You can make it where the students have to reset their password once it's created. You can even make it where you create one password and they're not able to reset it. For some schools, they may want specific passwords for specific students. It just depends. Okay. Now that concludes the presentation with that. Now, let me answer a few questions, and then I'm actually going to show you how to set these up. How to set up Google Suite for Education, actually show you a live demonstration of setting it up. How much time is a student schedule per day, per week? This needed to design, develop, upload, deliver, and manage learning for a class of 25 to 30 students. With the setting up the material for the students and just the teaching curriculum, I'm not sure the required time or how much it takes to set it up. This is more of a setting up the technical side to have you access to the G Suite for Education. So the full form for the DNS records, it varies depending on what you're trying to do. Google will provide you with that information once you set it up. So what information about the students, teachers, and administration does Google track? From what I understand is Google really doesn't track too much of that information. They are COPA certified, so they are really strict on what they're allowed to do. Most of this information that you're having is like a username, first name, last name, just stuff for other apps that require that information. So the information that they actually collect from the students and teachers are what you actually put into the accounts. All right, let us get to the actual setup. So here's the website that you'll go to start off the G Suite for Education. Like I said, it's gsuite.google.com/signup/edu/welcome. And here's the first page where it says, let's get started. It's free for eligible institutions, like I said. So we're gonna click next. Here's where we're gonna set up the school information. I'm just gonna put my name down, just as an example. Under here is where you'll select what type of school is it. Is it a primary, secondary school, or is it a higher education school? So we'll say it's a primary school. All right, here's where it's gonna ask, like I said, for the website. The reason for this information, like the website and stuff like that, is it just helps Google verify. Most schools have a website that will actually show, like, here's the information, please join us, please register, here's teacher information. It's just one step that Google uses to help verify who you are as a school. And here is where you'll select the student size. Like I said, this is just a reference for the school. Depending on the size of the school, it doesn't matter. You don't lose services for being a smaller school. You don't gain extra services for being a larger school. This is just more of a reference thing. And here is some of the information it's going to ask for. It's going to ask for the school location, phone number. We're just going to put a phone number in there. We're just going to add a random address. We'll use that one. Oh. And this is where this next page, it's going to ask for the contact information. This is, in my experience, where you would put like the principal's information, someone who's going to be checking the email regularly to set up stuff, verify, so forth. So the next page is going to ask about the domain. They're going to ask you, would you like to purchase a domain from us, or do you already have a domain? Like I said, it's easier to have your own domain because then it puts it under your host. You have a lot more control over it versus what Google offers. Now, excuse me. With that being said, you can purchase it through Google. It centralizes everything, adds the DNS records and stuff to the admin console. But for this purpose, I do have my own. It's just saying that it won't be affected. And here is where you create your admin user. Like I said, you do not want this user tied to a specific person, and you do not want this account to be an account that's used every day. For this purpose, I'm just going to call it super user, just so I know that it is not a everyday account, and that it's not attached to a name that someone should be using every day. And here is where we add the password. Oh, let me type that in again. Here's where you're going to verify and agree to everything. I'm not a robot, of course. And then we just wait for everything to get verified. Now that it's verified, it's telling me right now that I do have a trial version from till May 1st. Once you originally set it up, you only have access to a few users, a few accounts until everything is verified. So let's continue with the setup. All right. So let's do this. We're going to activate it. This is where you get the information to verify that you're adding records and everything. Like I said, this is where you start getting into the very complicated technical stuff, adding the DNS records and so forth. Some people may think this or may have issues setting this up. If there is any problems, you can always feel free to contact me or my company, and we can help you with that. All right, like I said, if you do have GoDaddy, it actually follows you through all the steps to set up your Exchange records. So, like it says, you're going to sign into the domain where I'm at right here. Once you sign in, you're going to go to your DNS records. As you can see, I'm already at my DNS records. You're then going to add the MX records that Google assigns to you. The first one you're going to add is the, where is it at? There, yep, that's it. The ASPMX. And like it says, it's step by step. So we're going to go here. We're going to go to add. We're going to add an MX record. The host is going to be at, it's just because it's an email, point to, and it's going to point to Google's DNS records. And then depending on which one it is, all right, this one's going to be priority 1. And then save. So that's the primary MX record. As you continue, there are more MX records that Google will have you just in case they can't get a hold of that one. They're all right here. So you have alternate 1, alternate 2, 3, and 4, and then their priorities. So you'll do the same thing, like I said, and then you'll just add them in individually. Once that's done, you're going to save everything, come here, and then verify your account. So let's see if it will let me do it with just the 1. All right, as you can see, it's already found that I have the primary MX record here. So that means I can actually start using my emails pretty quick. So now that that's done, let me show you how to create the organizational units and the users. So let's first go to the home page so you just kind of know what it looks like. So here is the home browser for the admin console. What we're going to want to do is create organizational units. That's the first step. So what we're going to do is we'll just add staff just to show you. Oh, misspelled it. You can add a description to it if you want to. I like to label the organizational units as descriptive as possible. So there is really no need for a description. So we'll create that one. We'll create another one for student. Now, under student, we're going to add another unit. This is the individual grade. We're going to do first grade. So now that we have this set up, we can then start creating users. So same thing, home, go to users. We're going to make a staff member. We're going to add new user. All right, like I said, first name, last name. For the primary email, I personally like to use first initial, last name, just for ease of knowing the students, for the teachers, and even for the students, because they'll easily remember, hey, this is my first name, this is my last name. Over here, it's already selected the domain because I only have one attached, so this is going to be their email. Next, you're going to have the password. I personally like to create my own password. The reason for this is there's a different way to create bulk users. You'll download a template from Google, you'll add all the information, and then there you can actually add the passwords too. For that reason, I like to set a default password and have them reset it when they log in. All right, so we've created that user, and here's where you would create the student users. Some people may want to put the users under students, but remember, if you do have individual grades, you're going to actually want to put them in the correct grade. All right, and then you're all set. You have your students created, you have your domain, you have your email set up. Next step is just to start incorporating the actual application for G Suite for the individual students and the users. Now at this time, I'm going to take a look at the questions. If there's any questions that someone hasn't asked, please feel free to ask them, and I will answer as many of these questions as I have time for. All right, let's start with this material. I will be sharing it out to the organizer of this little mini conference, so they will have access to this. From there, I'm pretty sure he's going to share it out to everyone else. If not, I do know that they said you can view this on YouTube, so this information will still be available. Setting up Google Classrooms. Yes, you can set up Google Classrooms as the individual user or the individual teacher. The classrooms are actually set up per teacher per grade. So for the classrooms, you'll go to your classrooms, Google Classroom. This is all done through the application, and then you can set it up. So yes, this is complicated. Like I said, this is actually something more that's done on the technical side to set up Google for Education. The purpose for this presentation is to show teachers and staff members and everyone how to set up Google for Education. Sometimes schools have the teachers actually be their tech. So depending on the way your school is set up, if it gets too complicated and you do need help, the company I work for does provide technical support to set up stuff like this. So if there's any questions, you can reach us. My email is going to be wpoindexter@beyondk12.com. My boss's email is ernie@beyondk12.com. So I will be sending that in the Q&A. For anyone who has any additional, like they need some help or anything, feel free to email us. So we have another person asking about the video projects for their students for the actual Google Classroom. Again, this is more of the technical side of setting it up, but I do know that that's based on my experience that the students can submit assignments. How you set it up in the Google Classroom, once they submit it, only you're able to view it. So if they post it in the Google Classroom as just a general comment, then anyone can see it. But if you actually attach an assignment and have them be able to upload their specific assignment, only you will be able to see it. So for the personal and institution account, what's the difference? Depending on what kind of school or organization you are, the costs vary. For like a non-for-profit to have an account, it's still free. For a basic account, I believe each user is somewhere between like $4 or $5. It just depends on what kind of account you're wanting to set up. So someone's asking about group emails. You can do group emails. That's actually a different setup. I can kind of show y'all that really quick. So again, we're going to go here. And then you have groups. So it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, the admin console is very easy to use. So under here, you're going to add, oh, well, it needs me to verify first before it even lets me do anything else. So let me get back to here. So verify domain. You know what? We'll do this just so I can show you the steps of setting up groups. All right, looks like it verified. No, it has not verified yet. So the verification process may take some time. This is one of those things that you submit it or you put in the information and you just wait for it to actually say it's done. So basically under groups, what you can do is you'll have the option to add groups. Once you add the groups, you then have options to add individual users to them. As you develop the group and start adding the individual users, this is your group email. This could be staff@yourdomain.com, depending on what you have it set up for. You can have it set up for all school members, students. So all this is done under groups. No, so for the individual students, you can have individual emails. I just set up just a test because couldn't think of a name off the top of my head. For these individual users, for like first grade, second grade, third grade, as you add users into them, yes, they're going to be individual accounts. For me, it would be like Poindexter at poindextertext.org. Depending on your organization, like I said, it varies. Some schools don't want the lower grades to have their own email. So they would have something like first grade email, and that's the only one that's in first grade. And then the teachers would use that email or that account to set up like the Chromebooks and stuff. So even though it's an email account, it does not have to actually have email. It's more of a user account. So these user accounts would be used to log into the Chromebooks, Google, Chrome, different things. So yes, they do need to be individualized. It just depends on how you want to individualize them. So someone asked, someone said that they've used Google Classroom, but they've never done the G Suite for Education. The thing for the G Suite for Education you have to understand is that this is for the whole entire organization. So this is something that the school itself would want to set up, not like an individual teacher or a grader or something. So make sure that if you do set up Google for Education or G Suite for Education, get the principal involved. Get the school involved. This is something that can be set up for the whole entire organization. So that way that other classrooms can use Google Classroom, Google Meets, and different things. The reason for the G Suite for Education, the big thing is, as you can see, there is a centralized management. So if you set it up individually, you don't get this management software. So I can set up different management things, like I can actually go to the devices and set up more stringent security on the devices. I can force images onto the devices. I can set password requirements. I can disable incognito, different things that help track students and just make sure that they're doing the right thing and to keep them from doing anything wrong. I can disable different things, like one person can only sign in on at a time. You can even set it up where they can't delete their history. So if you want to see what they're doing on that device, you can go into that device and look at their history. They would never be able to delete it. So when setting up G Suite for Education, you want to do it for the whole school. It's not just for an individual or for a small classroom setting. So keep that in mind. So someone asked, what if it's a virtual school? As long as the school has information to verify that they are a school, Google will accept it. They're pretty lenient if you can present the information, the paperwork to verify that you are a school. If you are a virtual school, I'm assuming you do have a mailing address, so you would use that information. That would probably be one of the cases you would actually use a mailing address because you do not have a physical address. So yes, you can set this up if you are a virtual school, as long as you have the appropriate paperwork that Google requires to verify you. So someone just added something about the special ed teacher as a co-teacher. I think you can add co-teachers. Again, this is more of the technical side of setting up G Suite. So I'd like to answer all the questions if possible. When you are using when you're using Google Classroom, you can set up additional teachers and stuff so they can view stuff with you. Someone asking if I will be viewing this recording and PowerPoint. This is done through the host of the mini conference. I will be providing them with all the information. And like I said earlier, this is being added to YouTube. So what is Google's policy for privacy for students? Google states that they don't share their information. Again, they are COPA certified. That's the reason for separating this G Suite from other G Suites. They take student information and school information very highly. I mean, they are very strict on what they can release and give to other people. I do know that even asking for information from them as like the administrator, it's very hard to sometimes get information because of their policies and privacies for the students. Like I said, they do not share information. They are very, very good about keeping the COPA certifications and stuff the way they're supposed to be. All right, with that, it looks like we don't really have any more questions. With that, I am going to end this presentation. All right, if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to email me or my boss. My email is wpoindexter, that's WPOINDEXTER at beyondk12.com. Ernie's email is going to be Ernie at beyondk12.com. That's ERNIE.